Hello and welcome to a Bit of Film podcast. I'm Hatty.
And I am James.
This podcast is for film lovers, spoiler chasers and general banter. We are two Brits in lockdown with too much time on our hands talking about films.
We both hold degrees and jobs in the creative arts. Yes, our parents are so proud that it ultimately led to this podcast. So we might go into some behind the scenes or production elements you might not know or be familiar with.
We release episodes every 2 weeks, talking about the latest film and TV offerings. If you love excessive defending of plot holes and mispronouncing actors' names, this is for you.
Please be advised we discuss spoilers, so please turn off if you haven't seen or keep listening if you don't care.
This week we are talking about the Zac Snyder cut of Justice League, all 4 glorious hours of it. So for those of you who are not DC fans or live without Wi-Fi, the internet asked, and after $70 million paid by Warner Brothers, we have Zac Snyder's cut of Justice League. 4 years after Joss Whedon's theatrical cut that was not received well, Joss Whedon had to take over directing after the death of Zac Snyder's daughter. His wife was also working as producer on the project. So I didn't know that the edit is to raise money for suicide prevention. So Zac didn't even take a payment for this. Which is, so anyone listening, you've got to have a read of the Vanity Fair article about Zac Snyder, talking about the circumstances that led to this, because they're pretty insane. And also the film is dedicated to his daughter, Autumn, which is at the end.
That was, that was a
sad.
lovely little moment, which was really lovely. I mean, I suppose he couldn't have ended it any other way, but...
He said it couldn't be made without her, which was really sweet. And also that it also helped the negotiation that he didn't take a fee. Because he literally was like, I just want to get it made how I want it to, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, and given obviously what this article clearly says about how he's not taken a cut, this is all being donated on. I mean, the whole film is dedicated to her, and that was very, very sweet.
Definitely.
You said that you guys had sat down and watched the entire thing, and I thought, what I'll probably do is I'll watch 2 hours of it. I'll probably watch about half of it, 2 hours tonight, and then I'll watch the other 2 hours in the morning. Nope, I sat through the whole damn thing.
Everyone I've heard from had to sit down and watch the whole thing. You couldn't turn it off. It was like you were half invested, and if you'd seen the other one, you just had to know how it ended. Yeah,
it had a way of gripping you. No, I sat through and didn't feel like I didn't feel tired by the end, I think is the best way of describing it.
Yes, yeah.
I managed to get through it and still be thoroughly entertained.
Mm. Oh, actually, the 4:3, I finally found the reason behind the 4:3. It's because Zac Snyder wants to release it one day on IMAX. So that's why he delivered in 4:3.
I don't follow. So what, he's cropped it specifically so that he can do a widescreen version when he goes in cinemas?
Yeah, he can do an IMAX version.
Cheeky bastard.
I thought you'd like that.
I love how there's all these theories about how, he's done it in the 4:3 to make it look more edgy, to make it more like this, to make it more like that. And then we were talking as well about the fact that basically it meant he had less screen space to do his SFX on. And actually, no, it's because he wants to try and release it in cinemas at some point. Oh, God. I mean, how are you going to watch a 4-hour film in the cinemas? I mean, I know we've sat through like the likes of Endgame for 3 hours plus, but 4 hours is a long time.
They just have to give an interval.
Particularly with no breaks. They'll have to have an interval. They'll have to have an interval.
Oh dear.
What you were saying about the 4:3, I mean, it was weird at first, is all I can say. I've had these conversations with a couple of people who I know have watched it. The 4:3 is odd because obviously we don't watch films like that anymore, but you do get used to it quite quickly. I mean, I'd forgotten by like 30 minutes.
So which hour did it suddenly become okay at?
No, like I say, about 30 minutes in, I think I started to get used to it, and I don't know.
Oh yeah, Superman's mum. She had her dog cut in half. That was the only character that I saw that was cut in half throughout the whole thing for this 4:3.
Well, I didn't notice that. Clearly, it wasn't paying enough attention to the dog.
You always pay attention to the dog. And also, VFX sausage, hot dog stands, because, flying wieners are also an important part of DC.
Jesus Christ. Oh, that was really weird.
I know, I didn't like it.
That was very weird, and the super close-up of the sesame seed on the bum. And to be honest, that truck driver should have his license revoked. I mean, he was looking away from his windscreen for far too long. It's amazing no one else got hurt.
Yeah.
Still the original one. And I think at the time, I didn't hate it. I mean, I remember the stories around it in terms of, obviously, it had production issues, and I think it was... And obviously, Moustache Gate, which as far as I'm aware, they fixed in this one.
Yeah, they obviously had a lot more budget to go and fix some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, I think a lot of what will have happened with Zack Snyder's Justice League is that clearly they took every criticism from the first one and thought, right, let's fix it all. From what I understand, so obviously Zack Snyder was filming Justice League. That was always the original plan, and at the point that he left, he basically had a 4-hour film. So at that point, it was 4 hours long because there was rumors about whether or not it was going to be split into 2 parts. Right. In the same sense that Infinity War was originally rumored to be split in 2 parts. But then clearly there were some discussions going on at the studio and they wanted to release like one big film.
Yes, yeah. The article I sent, because that talks about what the circumstances that happened with that. So Snyder had sent the 4-hour one to the execs. I think it's like the 3 execs of Warner Brothers who are now been fired. Mm-hmm. And they all were like, no, this isn't working. No, you're going to have to cut it. And then his daughter committed suicide literally about then. And he tried to keep going. And then it just got to a point where there was just so much criticism and Debbie and him just got overwhelmed and left the project. So they did try and keep going for a bit, but then it just was, too much, completely understandably.
Oh, yeah.
Josh was just given an impossible job.
Yeah. Clearly he got brought on because obviously of success with the Avengers films, but clearly Joss Whedon couldn't even save the DCEU, so... but from what I understand,
Josh is in a bit of hot water at the moment. So I think this is just adding to some other stuff going on with him at the moment. I would say that there were things that were addressed in Justice League. For example, the character of the Flash was supposed to be funny, and it didn't quite work, and it was a really odd hybrid. I felt, particularly having watched the series at the time when I was watching it. I didn't understand what he'd done with the character. I was really confused. There were some really harsh cuts in the Joss Whedon that just didn't explain movements. Characters evolved, appeared, and there seemed to be very disconcerting things. So I would say it is fan service, but actually it's closer to just telling the story that he originally wanted to tell. And I'm actually surprised that this got greenlit, because the first hour and a half is establishing characters who you've never met before. And it's really hard. Like, the beauty of Avengers was that we all knew the characters. When Tony Stark arrived or showed off his new, techie stuff, we didn't question it. We didn't need an explanation. We didn't need a backstory. We knew him. And with these characters, particularly Cyborg, I think his name is, he has a lovely backstory that is fully fleshed out in this movie. And I understand why Josh cut where he did, because he had to. There were bits and it was like, you can't put this shot in. But then because he didn't, there was just everything seemed to kind of impact each other, and you ended up with these horribly harsh cuts. To me, it was a better way of telling the story. The VFX fixed a lot of stuff, which I seem to remember from Justice League was a bit weird. What I will absolutely say is in this edit, all of the characters are much better established, are much more likable, and have much more motivations for decisions that are made.
It treats the characters a lot better. In every sense of the word. Even
to the point that I would actually say that Ben Affleck's Batman is not as horrific as I thought it was going to be. I can understand why he was like, yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, he's not Christian Bale. Let's just put that out there. The big thing for me was the movement of Wonder Woman in the edit. Did you notice this, or was this just me looking at the edit thinking that there was something special there that there wasn't?
When you say they changed the movement of Wonder Woman.
Yeah, they sped her up, so she moved faster. So it was almost like a human watching her rather than like at her speed, like bullet speed.
No, I think there were. I suppose it depends on which moments you're talking about. Like I'm still very much thinking of the bank scene at the very beginning of the film, which, to be fair, I thought was pretty similar to what Joss Whedon had done. But that was again sort of trademark Zack Snyder slow motion. That was a mixture of, like you say, sort of like how humans would perceive her, but then how she would perceive everyone else, sort of in that bullet time. I thought that scene in the original version was pretty badass anyway. So the fact that it's left relatively sort of edited in this version was quite good. Except for the fact that she straight up kills a guy at the very end.
Yes.
Actually, several guys, but it was more the point. I think there's one point where she throws a guy against a wall, and then there's like a blood splatter, which is new. Trying to... Well, it's new, but... I mean, this is R-rated, isn't it? This whole film was R-rated, which to the most part, I didn't really get that it was R-rated, except for the brief moments where you had blood splattered across the wall, and I think there's a couple of moments where hands get chopped off, and particularly at the very end.
Yeah, I'd say there's more mature themes in this one, and the lightheartedness is gone for good. Back on the bank scene, what I thought was interesting about it was the fact that Josh had used different takes. So there was no upskirting of Wonder Woman, which was a nice one. And also that just they were kind of like they were like more determined but simultaneously kinder takes than the ones that Josh Whedon did.
Since watching the Zac Snyder cut, I've seen lots of videos which are like comparing the Josh Whedon and then the Zac Snyder one.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting with certain, even like the action scenes where they basically have them side by side, and you can see that the Zac Snyder one is much longer than the Joss Whedon one, but that tends to be because of slow motion. It's funny you should pick up on how Wonder Woman was filmed in this version, because that was very apparent.
And now we know that her and Josh Whedon didn't really get on. That also kind of adds a little bit to it.
Well, it kind of, if anything, it kind of ruined my perception of Joss Whedon, because obviously my perception of Joss Whedon up till this point has been like he was the creator of Firefly, wasn't he? I'm not making that up.
Firefly, Buffy, Angel, there was something else he did, but yeah.
So well, of those three, Firefly is the only one that I've seen.
James.
Don't shake your head at me. I can't watch everything. That's not possible.
That's true.
But obviously, well, Firefly obviously being one of the primary ones, but then he obviously brought Avengers the first time round. Like, in my own sort of nerd world, I mean, he seemed really, really good at his job. But then, yeah, kind of seeing. And now, there's lots of little things with one, like particularly the shots. Like, I remember I think there's a shot when it was a side-by-side comparison. I think there's two, actually. One where she's gone to go and meet Cyborg for the first time, and when she's meeting Bruce after he comes back with Barry. And there were shots that very much focused on her rear.
Yeah.
And it just completely gone.
I remember that.
And then there was the whole thing of Flash landing on top of her during the middle of a fight scene, which was very awkward. And then there was a whole sequence where Aquaman was basically objectifying her right before they went off to the final battle. And I mean, at the time, lots of those, I suppose the Flash one, at least me watching it the first time, seemed like an attempt at comedy, because I know they did that with Age of Ultron. They did that with Banner and Natasha, I think.
Yeah, but they were but the difference with them is that they'd established them as a kind of a couple, almost.
Yeah, but it was still kind of like an unnecessary thing to have. Like, I mean, regardless of whether they're a couple or not, that was a really weird thing to sort of put in the middle of a fight sequence. So it was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of a parallel thing. But like just the whole thing of Aquaman, like sort of, like I say, the way he's talking about her and objectifying her, it just seems like a really odd thing to put in that film, regardless of the context.
I agree with you. It's kind of ruined Josh Whedon for me too. But I did really enjoy the Snyder Cut, and I'm with you. I don't know if I'd have sat through 4 hours at the cinema for this. I really don't think I would have. I think it's quite telling that Josh Whedon didn't actually say he directed it when it was released. It still said it was directed by Zac Snyder, even though we're all like, this is a Josh Whedon cut. Didn't
notice that either. Interesting.
Yeah, which was... So I think that I understand why a lot of the actors were a little disgruntled, to say the least, with him, if only for that. But also, of course, it sounded like filming was not fun.
No, but then, sorry to play devil's advocate, but I mean, even with Joss Whedon, I mean, we know what, at the end of the day, Age of Ultron made him abandon the Marvel franchise.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he went from that, where he was getting a lot of pressure from the studio to do certain things, and then ended up going onto a film which had already basically been finished, and then was working for a studio that put a lot of pressure on him to do a lot of things. So I don't think he had an easy ride of it either. I think he tried to do the best with what he did.
I don't think it's fair to take it out on your crew and cast, though.
No, well, clearly, I think this is where you've got more information than I have.
That's true. But no, please do have a read of the Vanity Fair article, where the full backstory behind it is definitely interesting.
We'll have to link that in the description of this episode.
Yeah, I think so.
It's difficult to know whether or not how much was planned originally. This is the thing. When I was watching it, I had to kind of watch it through two different lenses, as it were. I had to watch it. One, is this a reaction to the first film, to the original film, sorry, I should say, or is this true to his original vision? And I think it is a little bit of a mixture of the two, but it's kind of like framing it in the mind of, if this had come out in, was it like 2017?
Yeah.
If this had originally come out, would it be this big sort of Marvel thing, no pun intended, that that it clearly is at the moment? Obviously, it's been released in the middle of a pandemic, so there's going to be a sort of a lot of people going to sitting down and watching it because of that.
That's definitely true. It's definitely helped it. Definitely not hindered it.
Yeah, and it's obviously got this massive following in the sense that there was the whole hashtag release the Snyder Cut, and eventually Warner Brothers gave in and then released it. Gave him the budget to then re-release it. And now there's the whole hashtag restore the Snyderverse. So, I mean, they've kind of opened the can of worms at this point. But,
I know, I think they've shot themselves in the foot without realising that one.
Yeah. But,
we'll give them a little bit, and now they want a mile, yeah.
But the reason I bring that up about the two different lenses is because with Jason Momoa's character with Aquaman, the way they were sort of bringing in elements of the trident that he gets in his own film, and then I can't remember the name of his character, but the guy that William Dafoe plays, it's like Varco or something like that.
Volko.
Okay, so I wasn't too far off.
No ideas, Volko. I'm not. It looks like nudist, but I don't think that's what they're going for.
But obviously, with him being in it, and there was the part where he'd gone down to Atlantis and he'd seen I don't know, it's like a throne where it's where the Julie Andrews kaiju monster thing lives, but apparently didn't appear in this scene. I don't know. William Dafoe's character, who I've already forgotten the name of his character.
Volko.
He brings the armor and he brings the trident. I think the one that he goes to see is the King's Trident or something like that he eventually gets in Aquaman. But I was watching this and I was thinking, right, so has he gone back and refilmed this? Was this always meant to precede Aquaman, or have they put this in to make it all look a bit more connected? Because the DC universe hasn't exactly been great in terms of its continuity, and I thought that was actually a nice piece. That was a nice little scene to put in there that kind of threaded back into his story in Aquaman. And there was a couple of other little bits that sort of did the same thing, but that was the one that I remembered most, I think. But I think that's more because Aquaman was the first film to sort of come after that.
I've got to run something past you that I read. So I read something that actually Joss Whedon's edit was a response to the criticisms that he received from Age of Ultron. So he added and tweaked things that he put in in Justice League that actually was just people critiquing his directing style from Age of Ultron. So I was wondering what you were going to think about that.
Because funny enough, I think part of Joss Whedon's problem in Age of Ultron was the fact that Disney were giving him lots of restrictions in the sense that he had to set up. Because I think in Age of Ultron, he ended up setting up Infinity War, Ragnarok, Civil War, Black Panther.
Yeah.
And probably a few more that I'm not thinking of. And I suppose it's not the hardest thing in the world because a lot of them are sort of like passing references. But I remember that being one of the sort of key issues, let's say, of Age of Ultron. But I don't hate on Age of Ultron as much as everyone else seems to. Like, I mean, it was never going to be as good as the first one, but it was still a pretty solid Avengers film.
It wasn't as good as the first Avengers, but it was never going to be.
This has been my whole problem with the DCEU is the fact that I know that what they were trying to do was sort of mimic what Marvel was doing, but with the DC characters. And at the end of the day, we've had X amount of Batmans, X amount of Jokers now. It's almost like they're just like, we'll just make as many films to do with these characters as possible. It's like almost what they did with Spider-Man and Fantastic Four. They were just rebooting them as many times as they could to try and keep the IP.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's like one of those ones where they just kind of need to have a bit of direction.
If someone says to me, like, are you a Marvel or a DC fan? I'm a DC fan, I would say, because they're detective
Okay, that's
comics,
the end of this. That's the end of this podcast. Goodbye.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love watching Marvel. I enjoy it. It's good fun. But there is a darkness to DC that has always just been brilliant.
Oh yeah.
I kind of want to slap them sometimes, and I'm like, why are you trying to be Marvel when you kind of give up being DC? DC is supposed to be darker. It's supposed to have darker themes. It's supposed to push the envelope. It's supposed to make you think. And I think that's why I really respected the Joker movie, because they actually, firstly, they accepted that Heath Ledger had been Joker, and so they completely got that the theme of it somehow related to that. And then they tried to do something really dark. And I was like, That's what they should be doing. That will push Marvel out of the water every single time, because they border that thing of being the kind of what the public wants, as well as having this really dark, meaningful thing. I mean, that's why Tim Burton's Batman, he did so well, which is arguably why they've been able to reboot it as many times as they have. And why Nolan was able to come, I want to make an even darker Batman, and I want to make it a little less kind of comic book, and he was able to do it, because fundamentally the characters are just more complex. And I think that's maybe a part of the reason why Justice League was great, because every single character had that moment that you were like, shit, that's horrible. Like, that is really bad. Like, yes, of course you want to do this. And instead of it being like Marvel, where it's always like, it's got to be faster, it's got to be this, it's all about the stone, it's got to be... DC characters aren't like that. DC characters are like, my whole world has fallen apart, and I don't want to keep doing this. And it's fascinating, and I love watching the kind of character breakdown that they present. I get disappointed with Marvel because I don't find them as interesting, and I think that's why I particularly liked WandaVision so much, is they went down this route that they took a risk on, which is what I actually associate with DC.
No, that's interesting. I know what you mean. I know what you mean, and I think if they tried to do any of the DC characters in a Marvel style, let's say, it wouldn't work. So I think there is something to that. I mean, yeah,
which is what the Joss Whedon Justice League tried to do.
Yeah, which is the mistake. It's like, yeah, it's exactly what you just said in terms of like, why are you trying? Because I mean, the point is DC wouldn't be able to compete with Marvel. Marvel was already established by that point. They already had the crown. What they needed to do was something different. I mean, I saw a quote from Zac Snyder. I can't remember it word for word, but it was about this debate. I mean, in terms of like him not wanting to be Marvel. What he wanted to do was he didn't want to compete on their level. What he wanted to do was almost push the fantastical, mythological side of the DCEU, as opposed to the comic book superhero flick that Marvel was. So they're still doing very different things, but have mutual respect for one another, I suppose. I mean, I honestly hate it when people say, "Are you a DC or a Marvel fan?" Because I'm a fan of both. It's as simple as that.
I watch both. Absolutely.
Why deprive yourself of one of them? I mean, at the end of the day, when it was obvious that the DC were trying to compete with Marvel on their level when they started, well, presumably with Man of Steel, but they still have that darker, grungier thing. And I agree with you. I think it's a case of trying to embrace what makes them different.
I do not understand why they hired Joss Whedon. There are so many other directors who would have done it complete justice, who have not a similar tone, not an identical tone to Snyder, but at least similar, and get the tone. And Joss Whedon, for everything that we've just discussed about Marvel versus DC, I completely do not understand why they hired Joss Whedon.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I know why he was hired.
PR-wise, yes.
I know why he was hired, but I know it was for all the wrong reasons. At the end of the day, there was a studio panicking that they've invested all this money into a film that basically wasn't finished. So they thought, right, okay, well, let's bring in the guy who managed to sort out the Avengers. And obviously, like you say, different tones.
If they looked at the edit that he'd made, how, if you gave, you haven't seen Watchmen, but if you gave Watchmen to Joss Whedon, it would be a totally different film.
Yeah, no, I get that. It would not
be dark, it would not be this. It's like, why didn't, it should have been the Todd thingy who directed Joker, but I realised at the time he hadn't done a superhero movie at that point. But just somebody darker, somebody who could have, I'd have begged Nolan, I'd have been like, please.
I think Nolan had washed his hands of it after doing the Dark Knight trilogy.
I think so. But do you know that he's actually an exec on the Snyder Cut?
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me, no. Yeah, I mean, he was an exec on Man of Steel, but I'm pretty sure that means he had nothing to do with the film. But this is what I don't get. I mean, you might be able to tell me more of this, but as far as being an executive producer, as far as I'm aware, that just means that they've negotiated something in their contract that says we'll put you in as a credit for executive producer. You don't have to do anything. We'll tag your name on that. It makes you look more important.
So sometimes it's money, sometimes it's advice, sometimes it's story input, sometimes it's just, you're one of the senior members at the studio and you greenlit it. exec producer is one of the weirdest credits you can be given. It's everything from you mentored me through this through to you gave us half the money and the facilities or to do it. So I have no idea what he did on Man of Steel, but my guess is it wasn't story. It might have been money, but I guess not. But I'm not sure. No,
I'm not sure. I remember in the trailer all that time ago now, but when Man of Steel was first unveiled, as it were, it did say from producer Christopher Nolan, because at the end of the day, what they were trying to publicize there is that, well, you like the Dark Knight, you like the darker take on the Batman, well, here's the darker take on Superman, even if he had very little involvement in it. So this will be an interesting point. I'll be interested to get your take on it. So I did think there were certain scenes or certain elements which I thought Joss Whedon's one did better.
Ooh, okay.
And I think that was more to do with, I think it circulated around when they're bringing back Superman.
Yes.
When they're having the discussion about using the mother box that they've got to basically resurrect Superman. I remember in the Joss Whedon one, there was more conflict in that decision. There was more discussion, let's say. Whereas in the Snyder cut, I felt like that they came to that decision far too quickly. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I've got another thing I can jump in on that one.
Okay.
So Zac's original story was that he wanted Amy Adams' character Lois Lane to be in a relationship with Batman.
No.
Yeah. So this is what. So they were in a relationship. This was Zac's original idea for the story. They were in a relationship, and it suddenly gets to a point where Bruce Wayne realizes that he needs to resurrect Superman, and then there is one of the lines that I think is continued, which is that Bruce Wayne says, which is something along the lines of like, she's our secret weapon, which is the Lois Lane element. And the reason why that line should have more impact is because it's supposed to be that Bruce Wayne is having a relationship with Lois Lane. Lois Lane. That was too many alliterations.
Bruce Wayne in a relationship with Lois Lane.
Yeah.
So actually, that brings me on to another one. So they're all sort of like tiny little things. I am really nitpicking, but there was also the whole. So yes, in the Joss Whedon cut, as I'll now call it, when Superman's resurrected and he's a bit disorientated, he's starting to basically attack them all. I think, if I'm right in thinking, Bruce Wayne had Lois Lane basically there on standby to basically bring him back to his senses. Whereas in the Zac Snyder cut, she's kind of just there.
Yes, she was. I thought that as well, that she just suddenly was conveniently there. Yeah, because she always comes to. I mean, she's supposed to come at the same time every day. That's why, isn't it?
Yeah, I know they set it up in the earlier scenes of the episodes, earlier scenes of the film.
It's episodic. I'll give you that.
Well, it is with the 6-7 different parts.
Chapters, yeah.
Yeah. But so I mean, it wasn't entirely sort of out there. I just thought it was. I don't know. I suppose it was a bit more natural. I don't know. There was just a few things like that which kind of didn't work. I remember in the original Aquaman, so Jason Momoa, Arthur Curry, that's his sort of actual name.
Yes.
He's very much against the idea of sort of bringing him back, as is Diana, from what I recall. Like, she's very much more let the dead rest, or let him live in peace. I think because it was all harkening back to the fact that in Batman v Superman, basically Batman wasn't willing to let Superman live, and now he won't let him die. And there was a brilliant line in the original as well from Henry Cavill, which was exactly that. It's like, you won't let me live, you won't let me die. And that was entirely gone from this version. And I thought, I don't know, there was just slight little touches like that, which I kind of missed from the original.
But is that a bit prescriptive? Is that prescriptive to just be like, to make him say it? Like, Zac doesn't like to have people say what they mean purposefully.
Maybe, I don't know. I just thought that was a really cool line. But I mean, saying that, I mean, the whole transition for Bruce Wayne sort of feeling a responsibility to bring the League together, as it were, and then to bring Clark back. I don't know if it was because this was obviously a 4-hour cut, and I can't remember at what point in the film that they do start to bring Superman back. It was presumably towards the sort of like third act.
It's like 2.5 hours in, I think.
Yeah, it's probably something like
Which
that. Which
works better in this one, I'd say. Sorry, yeah, you keep going.
No, well, I think just to that, the fact that it was 4 hours long, and then I think that, like you say, they bring back Superman in the sort of like 2.5 hours, let's say. There's been a long time to sort of show why Bruce wants to, because with the original, with the Joss Whedon one, considering everything we knew from Batman v Superman, he changed on a dime very quickly, and it just didn't feel like the arc wasn't really there, or wasn't consistently there, I suppose. So I think this one did do that better to a point.
Yeah.
And I think there was also the thing that like Batman or Bruce Wayne didn't. I think he didn't really feel like he could be on their level. Like he thought his role was simply to bring them together, to bring the meta-humans together. He wasn't going to be part of the league, really. Because I think he has a conversation with Alfred as well, where he's like, "You've done your bit, you've done your work. Can you now rest, so to speak?"
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's something quite nice about that, because obviously he does play a part in the final scene as well. So I don't know. I thought the treatment of Bruce Wayne was better in this. I thought it was more consistent with what we'd seen in Batman v Superman, even though he'd obviously sort of turned back to supporting Superman. But then again, I suppose that's the consistency of Zac Snyder's vision. That's the benefit of having a director who can sort of plan out these films.
Well, I think he's the director who was there at the beginning, which helps. So the thing I liked about Ben Affleck's Batman is I think it was actually the closest character to Zac Snyder, like in terms of age. And actually, I felt this character come through that I hadn't seen before, which is this guy who has achieved a lot in his life and is beginning to question kind of if he should kind of keep going almost. There was that kind of, I don't want to say middle-aged man, but there was that thing of kind of like, am I past my prime? Should I try and step back? But actually, no, I'm still needed. No, I still need to be here. And it was a really lovely kind of little gem that they kept for Ben Affleck, which I felt wasn't really... It's the reason why, like, it's almost like things keep happening to him when he's turned around and trying to walk away, and everything keeps pulling him back. But it wasn't done in a kind of explicit way. It was done in these kind of subtle ways of, like, you know, when the new guy who comes down with the there's like a new character.
Yeah, I know who you mean. It's he's called Martian Manhunter, who at the time I had no idea who he was. He was just thrown into the mix. And to be fair, at the end of the film, I was thinking, where have you been for this entire film? You could have helped them.
I think we all did. But yeah, when Martian Manhunter turned up, and I was like, yeah, that's to me what they're doing with this Ben Affleck Batman. It's a man who's like, I should walk away. I'm not, I should step back and leave it to somebody younger. But actually, for some reason, people still see me as a leader to keep going. And I don't know, what do you think? Did you get that, or is it just me?
It did feel kind of like Bruce felt like he didn't really... He wasn't able to operate on the same level as all these metahumans that he was bringing together.
Yeah.
So I do completely agree with you there. I mean, in that scene with Martian Manhunter, such a ridiculous name, with Martian Manhunter at the end, where he's saying that it's been a while since I've seen the Defenders of Earth work together, and that's because of you. It is like you say, it's him having to be reminded that actually he does have a purpose in this. And so interestingly, this kind of also feeds back into what I was saying about certain elements, which I think Joss Whedon's one did better. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I could be completely wrong here. So when it comes to the final battle where Batman goes off first in his tank, does he have that line where he's like, whatever happens, don't come back for me, or something like that? Because I remember in the original Justice League, it's almost like he's going on a suicide mission. He's going to give them the opening to finish the job. I can't remember if that was in the Zac Snyder one. Because I mean, the whole sequence still happens, but it was the fact that Batman goes off first and he tells the others, whatever happens, keep going, as it were. And it is almost like that's him saying, "Oh, do I have to rewatch the 4-hour cut again?"
I think he does. No, I think he does.
Does he say that?
I'm pretty sure, because he's saying that, like, I'm gonna be like, you guys go that way, I'm gonna be going this way. Don't come back and save me, just keep going. And then they do, of course, come back and try and help him.
I hope that moment was in there, because that kind of, again, it's that whole shooting, he's drawing them all away. And basically it's almost like he's on a suicide mission. That's like his final offering to give these gods, as it were, the chance to finish the job. And then, like you say, they come to his aid, and then you have that. Well, okay, so you have the moment which is ripped out of Avengers Age of Ultron, where you have all the heroes in slow motion, which I loved, but I'm thinking...
All in a line, yeah.
You've taken one thing from Joss Whedon.
You could not do it. You had to do it. I'm sorry. I think to me it's a superhero thing. If you didn't do it, it's just weird. It's called Justice League. They're all on the poster. Come on, you have to give them that shot.
But you get that. You do get that shot at the very end, don't you? But
yeah.
Anyway, I've slightly sidetracked. But yeah, it was. I think it's just. Yeah, I get. I agree with you entirely. Well, it's funny. I got to the end of this film and thought this is what the DCEU could have been.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone did. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
I think it's. I mean, I just part of me doesn't get all the criticism that Warner Brothers would have had from him in the first part. Like, all right, I know putting out a 4-hour film isn't going to sell well because I agree with you. I mean, to be fair.
Wait, I have to quote this. What was it? The list of things that he actually had to. How was it? This is a quote from it. Snyder said, the problem with the make it shorter order. He goes, "How am I supposed to introduce 6 characters and an alien with potential for word domination in 2 hours? I mean, I can do it. It can be done. Clearly, it was done, but I didn't see it." And I was like, "This is He had so much to do. Like, how did they even greenlight it? I think we discussed this before. I don't understand how that was greenlit. How can you justify it? You can't.
What, the whole concept of Justice League getting greenlit?
Yeah. 6 characters and alien domination, and the also super villain dude being introduced as well.
Because they were trying to copy Marvel. It's as simple as that.
But Marvel spent 4 films.
Well, this is it. Well, how many films did Marvel spend? Because, I mean, if we're including The Incredible Hulk, that's The Incredible Hulk, the 2
No, we're not. I don't think we should because it isn't with Mark Ruffalo.
No, but it's still a continuation, I suppose. It is still part of the MCU. It's just you've got to imagine that Mark Ruffalo was always in the first one. But anyway, even without The Incredible Hulk, you've got the 2 Iron Man films. So, all right, one of the Iron Man films sets up Iron Man. You've got the Captain America and the 4 films. That's 3 films, yeah?
Yeah.
In this one, we've had Man of Steel, which sets up Superman, Batman v Superman, which sets up Batman, and to a lesser extent Wonder Woman. And then, if I remember rightly, Wonder Woman came out before Justice League, but it may be in the same year. We've set up 3 superheroes before the team up. So it was sort of running, to be fair, it was running along the sort of the similar lines as Marvel, except obviously the DCEU didn't do it as well.
Well, the problem was with DC is they made Civil War before they made Avengers, really, in the theoretical order of it.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. But yeah, I mean, I suppose really what it needed, well, obviously in an ideal world, they needed to have had a film with all of them and then brought them together. But then this film did do quite a good origin story for Cyborg, definitely.
Amazing one, yeah. No wonder Fisher is furious about the fact that it didn't get released. There's a bit again in the article where he talks about like he was having sleepless nights because he was so angry that the film that they'd made wasn't the film that got shown. And I completely understand all of his work was basically taken out.
Yeah, he's been definitely cited as kind of like the sort of the core of or the heart of this film.
Yeah,
and you can see why, because I mean, his very being is basically tied to these mother boxes, which are also the thing they're fighting.
He's kind of Vision, isn't he? After a while, I was like, oh, so he's just Vision. So his identity is somehow linked with this thing that he's born from. Yeah,
I suppose it's because, in the sense that Vision is obviously born of Ultron, as it were. But I suppose, obviously with Cyborg, there's a greater humanity to it. It's the fact that he's got a lot more humanity, but he's stuck in being this outcast.
No, that's true.
It's him, and the whole relationship with his father was so much better done in this. Like, Jesus, it was, again, it's kind of like
when his dad died, you were like, oh no, like he's finally like getting a connection. It's all good. Yeah, that was heartbreaking.
I did think for a moment in that scene, I presumed he was trying to destroy the mother box. And obviously nothing happened, and then he died. I'm like, why did you do that? You've literally solved nothing.
And then he made it warm, yeah.
Yes, and then like 5 minutes later, they established that, he basically created a heat signature on it so they could track it. So that all suddenly made sense. But I'm thinking, why have they done this? Yeah, it goes without saying that the whole treatment of Cyborg in this was just so much better. And I also loved Ezra Miller. I loved the Flash. I thought every scene he was in, I was just enjoying it. He was brilliant, and I think now, I mean, you mentioned, didn't you, that the Flash movie, that there is now a Flash movie still going ahead?
Yes. That's they're releasing more things as it's going. The VFX artist from the new Snyder Cut is actually working on it right now.
Ah, brilliant.
So there must be an early starting production on it. Yeah. Woo.
See, this is why I think the Snyder Cut is going to be the saving grace of the DCEU. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's obviously saying like hashtag restore the Snyderverse, and Warner Brothers are currently like, no, that's it. You got what you wanted. You ain't getting anything else.
As something from my read, until they hire the new execs.
Until they hire the new execs. Well, this is it. I mean, they said the exact same thing when people were asking for the Snyder Cut of Justice League, and now everyone's asking for the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad?
Yeah, but apparently they're like, no, that'll never come out, and you're like, it's gonna come out.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I mean by they've opened the can of worms. Like, they've given in once, they can give in again. I mean, you've got HBO Max, you might as well fill it. But this is it. I mean, I suppose it's what's going to become of this, because at the end of the day, I think, obviously helped by the fact that everyone's still trapped indoors, the Snyder Cut is going to have boosted the potential of the DCEU, and I reckon
it needed something, so that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there must be like an Aquaman 2 on the way. I think that's been in the works since the first one was a roaring success. I'm really excited for the Flash to be done, and I am kind of hoping that they do go back and do a Cyborg.
I think that would be quite.
I think that would be really interesting to see. And then obviously Suicide.
I'm not sure what else they can do though, because there's really like a whole film of Cyborg in there in Justice League right now. I'm curious as to how they do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's where they take him on his journey next. But I suppose you could say the same about any other sequel to any sort of superhero film.
True.
It's all about what journey you take that character on. And we're talking about. I mean, I'm basing this off Marvel, but I mean, in the same sense that Marvel has an infinite amount of comic book lore, no doubt the DCEU also has that they can draw upon. I mean, I remember seeing, I think it was actually the Honest trailer of Batman v Superman. They made a joke about how they basically had burned through like 6 films worth of content for that film, because it was the whole thing where they were teasing Steppenwolf, Darkseid, all that sort of stuff. There's an infinite amount of things that they could go down. So yeah, no, I don't doubt that they couldn't do a proper Cyborg solo movie, but I'm pretty sure I remember that there was talks of a Cyborg and Flash duo movie at some point.
That would be funny. I have to admit, I enjoyed what they did with Flash. This time it finally felt like he was like a teenage boy. Whereas last time he was trying to be like the comic guy. Whereas this one, it was almost like, oh, I'm shiny, I'm new. Oh, we do that? Oh, no, okay. Do I go here? Oh, like it was like, do I stand here? Is that right? Batman, is that okay?
It's still one of my favourite scenes where Bruce Wayne has found his man cave and he's pitching him the idea of like, I'm putting together this team, and he's like, stop right there, I'm in. I need friends. I mean, it's Ezra Miller, isn't it? I just think he's
lovely, yeah, definitely.
He's just a joy to watch. And I don't think we can go past talking about the Flash without talking about basically the moment where he rewinds time.
Yes.
Or somehow I don't think you enjoyed this as much as I did.
No, the bit where he then joins with Cyborg and he like runs backwards, as it were, or whatever he did.
Yeah, so it's in the final fight sequence where they've basically lost. Like they haven't got there in time because the Parademon has shot Flash, so he's injured, he's down.
That's it, yeah.
And then I think that the mother boxes converge, and then basically it's supposed to completely decimate the Earth. And then at that.
Oh, that's it. And then he runs forward, and therefore is able to go back. Yes.
I only remembered what was happening because I have seen so many memes and jokes about the fact that Superman flew around the Earth so fast that he reversed time. So I know that was exactly what Flash was doing. Yeah, no, I just thought that was a really, really cool scene. And it just, the whole end fight scene, it was very much more they were working, like everyone had a part to play, and it all felt a bit more like they were a team, which I don't think the original Justice League had as much of.
And I think that showed the difference between Joss Whedon and Zac Snyder, because the Avengers, when you had them all kind of working together and each of them had their own role, and that was very prescriptive of like what they had to do. Whereas with this one, it was like, no, just get inside. And that worked really well. Well, Flash was running around until he tripped. But no, it was, I really enjoyed it. I loved Cyborg's performance. I loved Flash's performance. Just an actual film, a full kind of identity film. And my problem is that they just had too many people to introduce, and the more I reflect on it, the more I'm like, so basically you're saying that none of the Justice League are any good, because really all you need is Superman, and then we're sorted.
There is that problem, yes, and I think that's why I mentioned this when we were talking about Wonder Woman. Most of the DCU characters, there doesn't feel like much of a risk because they are, well, superhuman in a completely different sense as like any of the Marvel characters, or Batman, for instance. I mean, they're all, it's like, with Wonder Woman and Superman especially, if they get shot, they're fine.
Yeah. And
I probably quoted that exactly when we were talking about Wonder Woman, but it's kind of like when that can happen, the risk is completely gone. It's more a case of they have to. And to be fair, I think the opening scene in the bank with Wonder Woman, and also I think they did do it in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. The only way to sort of introduce risk is when there's a threat to civilian life, which I know sounds really basic, but there's no risk to the hero, so to speak, unless you've obviously got kryptonite or some other magic stone, particularly with the Snyder Cut, where it's like, because it's the one where Steppenwolf basically he's about to bring his axe down on Cyborg, and then Superman just appears, which is an amazing moment. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, when that happened, I thought that was just bloody cool. But it just kind of just put home that point that they don't need a Justice League, they just need Superman.
You guys are doing the help action. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, you're the supporting characters. But yeah, I found that as a problem really for the DCU. Sorry, just DC in general.
Do you know this expression that DC is about gods trying to be human and Marvel is about humans trying to be gods?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and I love that expression. And to me, that is just the epitome of this film, that you have a god. Although I'm confused where the other Olympian gods went from when Steppenwolf. Did they just die? The immortal gods that were like when they first kept them away? Wasn't quite clear.
Well, I mean, Ares was still alive in Wonder Woman.
Yeah, exactly. So are they just sleeping? Like, is that for one? That would have been a cool Wonder Woman too, that she had to go find somebody. But no, they decided to ruin it instead.
Go and listen to our podcast on Wonder Woman 1984 to find out why.
And of course, I have to mention the fact they sorted the mustache. The Amazons are still alive.
Yes. Sorry, no. Before we go with the Amazons, yes, the mustache. Although, to be fair, I think that is one of the... Again, I'd be interested in finding a breakdown of what scenes were completely reshot. I know that was one of them. I know the whole... I think I've read that on the farm. It was a case of, no, you know what, we're not even going to try and cover it up. We're going to get Henry Cavill back, and then we'll start again. Oh, God, yeah. I mean, to be fair, there were certain moments in the original where I was like, I mean, there's moments where I don't realise it, but it's then when you see the YouTube videos or the comparisons between the two, and you're like, oh yeah, no, that's bad. That's bad. Mission Impossible Fallout almost destroyed the DCEU.
Oh yeah, the Amazons are still alive, which is like, I thought they were dead. And like this further annoys me about Wonder Woman 2. I'm sorry.
Why did you think they were dead?
Well, the fact that in Wonder Woman 2, she just doesn't seem to want to go back at all to go find them.
Right, I don't know the lore behind it, but I think there is something in her first film where she is told that if she leaves, she cannot come back. I think it's to do with the fact that the whole island is shrouded, etc. It's all
secret, right? But then, how did he get in? How did Chris Pine's character get in? And the Nazis?
Through a plot hole.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, just...
It's the fastest way. It's the fastest way to travel through a plot hole. I don't know.
Okay.
I presume coincidence or sheer luck, but I suppose it was a case if she's going out to find it. I don't know. It's a plot hole. I could try and explain it. I do this all the time. I'm like, I have to defend these plot holes.
Oh, bless you.
So they call it the nightmare scenario, as it were, where they're in the post-apocalyptic future, which, I mean, I'm a sucker for anything like that, whether it's superheroes, zombies, or any other of the above. Well, because obviously we had the nightmare sequences in the Batman v Superman. So this is clearly a continuation of where that started, because they teased Darkseid in Batman v Superman, which obviously he is now being brought back in on this way. I'm going to ask you a question first. What did you think Jared Leto's portrayal as Joker was in this scene, coming off the back of Suicide Squad?
The scene that is in Justice League is a very different one, I would say, to the one that I saw in Suicide Squad. I still find that Jared Leto's interpretation of the Joker is too close to Heath Ledger, and I don't know if that's because of like public opinion of him, which is probably why the marketing had a problem, or if it's his performance. And I loved him in Dallas Buyers Club, so I would say I am a Jared Leto fan, so this is not me just, picking on him because. But then you compare it to what the Joker film that came out recently, and they had a very clear, very different interpretation of the Joker, and I still think that Jared Leto just suffers from the fact he's just too similar to Heath Ledger. I don't think it works for me as Joker.
Yeah, see, I thought it was a vast improvement. Although, to be fair, I didn't... this is the thing. I didn't completely hate his portrayal in Suicide Squad. I hated the fact that the marketing made it this big thing where he was actually in it for 5 minutes. At the end of the day, he was going with a different take, and it was a bit weird. It wasn't what I expected, but at the end of the day, it will always be Heath Ledger for me because he was the first proper Joker that I think I saw on screen.
Yeah, I don't mind them revamping Batman and Joker as much as they do. It's long as that every time they do it, there is something different. So to me, the Joker film had something different. Whereas with Jared Leto's performance, I'm like, what am I supposed to be getting from you? Because right now I get it that you've got a little bit of psychosis. Well, okay, a lot of psychosis, but I don't mind the visual looks. It was just like, I don't know, what emotion was I trying to get? Because right now it sounded like you were trying to get into Batman's head. And you were sort of succeeding, but I wasn't really sure what was really the point of that. He mentioned Harlequin, and then there was that serious tension between them. But I was like, okay, honestly, I'd have cut it out if someone had shown.
I wouldn't have cut it. I wouldn't have cut it. Just because I've mentioned this before. Any sort of post-apocalyptic setting or alternative timeline, as it were, I like it when shows do that. I find that quite interesting, and the fact that you've got all these heroes who are now kind of on the run, as it were. I'd like to see this timeline. I'd like to see this become a film, which is obviously what they were trying to do, because this was put and teased in the Batman v Superman one. So in Batman v Superman, you've got Flash, who has, again, because of his speed, he's basically gone back in time to warn Bruce Wayne. Well, we don't exactly know of what, but presumably it is Superman turning bad. And we see Flash in this sequence in that same costume that we see him in Batman v Superman. So I like that whole link. I like how it all sort of threaded together. It just felt like more of a continuous storytelling from Batman v Superman. So I thought that's what worked in this scenario. I don't like the fact that they've killed off Aquaman and Wonder Woman. So if anything, I don't want to see the nightmare scene, because why would you leave those two out? Because they're brilliant. But I don't know. I'd still quite like to see Ben Affleck and Jared Leto in a film where it's Batman v Joker as well. I feel like there is something there. I think that something could work. They'd have to think about how they portrayed the Joker in that. They'd have to how they change him, how they make him different, like you say.
I just don't know what he wants. That's my problem.
It's always you. It's always you. And what do people want? Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yes, but then show me a cool way of doing it. To show me if he's full psychosis, then go more psychosis. If it's supposed to be I don't know. I just don't get like Harlequin. Harlequin. She wants to have fun. She likes creating mayhem, and you get that.
Oh, we haven't even talked about Steppenwolf yet, have we?
No. I know people are angry about the spines missing, but I really loved the voice change. Did you notice this? That the sound effects that they changed on this edit, I loved it.
There's a slight change. Well, sorry, I said there's a slight change. There is a change. It's obviously, it's still very noticeably, I think it's Kieran Hines.
Kieran Hines, yeah.
Kieran Hines, who I still think was kind of wasted, for want of a better word. This is the thing that baffles me about this cut, is the fact that how the hell did they look at cutting down this film? Fair enough, all right, yeah, if you're trying to cut down a 4-hour film to a 2-hour film, fine, but you still want to keep Steppenwolf. Why did you change his design from what Zac Snyder had to what Joss Whedon thought of? It was just, I'm going back to these comparison scenes now that I keep seeing and seeing them side by side and thinking, what idiot thought that was worth changing?
I know.
At the end of the day, even if you'd superimposed Snyder's Steppenwolf into the original Justice League, he would have still been a shit villain to a point, but he would still look cool. I just don't understand why that change was done. I honestly don't. I find that baffling. I just can't conceivably think why they thought that was that. Yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it. I just think that was a stupid idea.
No, I completely agree. He I think they were trying to, Joss Whedon was taking the instruction from the execs of make it more family orientated and more bite sized, and therefore smooth over the villain and kind of tweak him. Yeah, go with that.
They can still come up with something better. But
maybe see if you can make him into a McDonald's toy. Is that possible? Can you do that to him?
No, I just don't understand it. Yeah, I mean, Steppenwolf was, I mean, it goes without saying, was massively improved by this film, just because he did lack substance in the original Justice League. The fact that he was just a pawn in the bigger game, as it were, really helped.
It was great. He had something to prove. It was wonderful. Yeah,
this is it. Yeah, the whole reason for his conquering of. I mean, we knew that Steppenwolf, even in the original, was working for Darkseid because he name drops him at some point. But it's kind of just like a throwaway, guess who's coming soon sort of thing. Whereas on this one, we know that Steppenwolf has fallen out of favor with Darkseid. He's doing this it's part of his job. He's claiming worlds for his lord, his boss, for want of a better word.
Thanos. Yeah.
Thanos. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's like the whole thing where he's talking to Desard or something like that, another one of Darkseid's cronies, and he's like, will he speak to me? Can I make my case to him? And he's like, once you've given him like 50,000 worlds, he will speak to you.
Forgive you. Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I understood his motivations more. It's as simple as that. And it's like you said. I'm going back to what you were saying before in terms of what does this character want. He wants to be back in favor with his master.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah. 100% on board.
But yeah, no, I think just sort of going back to what I was saying about Zac Snyder putting the emphasis on the mythology. I mean, it harkens back to a conversation that I think we've had, and I've probably had with every other person who I've discussed this with. It's the fact that the DCEU should not be trying to copy Marvel. They should be trying to do their own thing, which is focusing on these other elements. No, I'm kind of hoping that this, because funny enough, obviously, because this has come after Wonder Woman 1984, and I know we've talked about it in a previous episode, but I don't think 1984 particularly did any favours to the DCEU. But I'm kind of hoping that with the release of the Snyder Cut, it has kind of opened a lot of people's eyes in terms of what the potential is, and maybe we'll start to see a bit more coming out of the DCEU, because I feel like they have faltered. I feel like the fact that we've got the Joker film, which I only loosely consider to be a DC film.
Brutal.
Well, yeah.
It's
the only
James.
only connection to the DC is the fact that it's called Joker and the fact that it has the killing of Bruce Wayne's parents. That's it.
You're so mean. It's so mean.
No, don't get me wrong. I think it's a good film. I just think there were some people at Warner Brothers that thought, this film that you're making, what if you call it Joker? We'll put it into the DCEU.
Oh.
But sorry. So my point is, you've got Joker, you've got Robert Pattinson as the next Batman. And it's just all. I mean, what I want is them to sort of expand on this DCEU that they're building. I don't want them to start rebooting everything left, right, and centre.
I've got a thing on that, which is I don't know how they're going to merge Shazam and Aquaman with the new Justice League. For me, kind of tone.
You know what? I forget that Shazam is part of the, let's say, official DCEU.
Yeah. I knew that would stop you.
You know what? No. You know what? If Marvel can put Guardians of the Galaxy next to Iron Man and put Doctor Strange in there, for instance, DCEU can do that perfectly.
Okay. In Zac we trust. Is that what we're saying?
If Zac Snyder continues, I suppose, yeah. But I can tell you this. So. If Zac Snyder gets brought back in, he is going to get paid a shit ton of money.
And have full creative control. That was the other thing.
Yeah, exactly. He will have them eating out of the palm of his hand.
Well, actually, I didn't realise there was a lot of trolling of senior Warner Brothers execs about this. So they've received a lot of hate mail and just really aggressive fans. I thought it was quite a nice campaign, but actually I think it was a little bit dark. Yeah.
I don't know the ins and outs of it, and I try and stay out of that really. I mean, but it unfortunately does not surprise me that the Warner Brothers exec got a lot of abuse and death threats and trolling to get this film released. But if anything, that upsets me to a point, because it's kind of like, well, has this been made because of all that? Has this been made only because there was a lot of hate? And that's not the way the business should be. It's not the way that at least the fandom should be, at the very least.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's my opinion on it. So.
And I think it's their careers, and it's really hard. It sounded like it was a really hard situation, and decisions were made that were the best with what they had at the time. And I'm sorry how it all turned out.
I'd like to think that this is a case of, at the end of the day, in terms of these negotiations with Zac Snyder and clearly Warner Brothers, that this was a product of something hopeful as opposed to something destructive, and that's the way I'm going to remember this.
To me, I'm like, the fans took out a massive billboard saying, where's the Snyder Cut? And that to me is a kind of positive fandom of being like, we want something.
Yeah.
Without it actually directly being like more.
Well, that's. I mean, yeah, I completely agree with that. That's absolutely fine because that's not abusive, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
That's what the fandom is. It's the support, it's the love for something that then creates something else.
No, definitely.
Yeah, this became very serious about the Snyder Cut.
It did, but then that's okay. That's okay. We have to talk about the tea scene with Jeremy Irons being wonderfully British and being like, no, that's too much tea. No, not too much tea. You have to scald the tea now.
Mr. T. Yeah, no, that is. I mean,
that's so funny.
Yeah, no, I do think Jeremy Irons is a pretty good Alfred as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you've had Michael Caine, so you've got to go through the list of amazing British actors at this point. Isn't that the rule?
Yeah. No, that tea scene was, I say unnecessary. It was a great fun to watch.
Yeah.
It was very much a case of like Diana's trying to do something nice and he's like, oh no, she's going to do it wrong.
No. Yeah. Every Brit in America understands that moment where they're like, no, they're not using boiling water. What are they doing? They're ruining the tea.
Oh God, no, that was cool.
Well, I think the only thing to say is that at present, Warner Brothers has no pursue David Ayer's original cut of Suicide Squad. And watch this space.
Yeah. We'll report back in a couple of weeks and they'll be like, guess what's coming now, guys? No, they won't do anything until the Suicide Squad 2's out, will they?
No. But I enjoyed it. Basically, I enjoyed it. I'm really glad he released it. I'm glad all the money's going towards the suicide prevention thing, which is awesome. And you can buy also like merch and props as well. They're doing auctions of props as well for it, which I thought was just lovely.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't know that. I'll have to...
Thank you for listening to A Bit of Film podcast with Hatty and James. If you enjoyed, please feel free to share it with your friends, families and mortal enemies. Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode wherever you get your podcast. You can contact us through Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, or you can always email us at abitoffilm@gmail.com with new theories, opinions and comments. We'd love to read them.